everyone. My name is Ssanyu Lukoma, and I'm the founder of Brown Kids Read Incorporated. In this author interview, I'll be speaking to Malcolm Mitchell about his new picture book called My Very Favorite Book in the Whole Wide World. Malcolm Mitchell is the rookie who helped the New England Patriots win Super Bowl 51. He's also the founder of an initiative called Read with Malcolm, which introduces book ownership to students and works to improve literacy in schools. Malcolm's Share the Magic Foundation promotes the benefits of reading to kids in underserved communities. As the New England Patriots Summer Reading Ambassador, he encourages summer reading. He lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's the author of the picture book, The Magician's Hat. His new book, My Very Favorite Book in the Whole Wide World, goes on sale on December 29th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Of course, me too. I love this book, not only just because it's an awesome story and has so many adorable illustrations, but because I can definitely relate to the main character. I used to struggle with picking my favorite books sometimes, and I read a lot of books and still do, but I do struggle with choosing one that's my favorite overall. So why did you decide to write this book?
I wrote this specific book because growing up, I actually was a struggling reader. I struggled to find a book that showed me. I struggled to find a book that interests me. So when I reflected on my experience as a kid trying to find a book and how difficult it was, I thought it was a message that could relate to a lot of kids. And I did not want kids to give up on finding their favorite book.
Yeah, and I think that it's a really important message that this book gives, because when I was reading it, I was like, wow, so now kids are going to be able to see a character who goes through something similar, because teachers do give that assignment a lot, and maybe they'll come up with a creative idea of making their own book. So while I was reading it, I also noticed that Henley was a really active kid. Yeah. So how did you develop his character, and do you relate to him in any specific way?
Yeah, I always tell people I write from a very personal perspective. I mix a lot of fiction in also. I tell people I go to my own little creative world and make up stuff, but majority of the stories kind of start from a very true place. And the truth is that Henley is a lot like me as a kid who had troubles with reading, had troubles finding books, but he did not give up. And he eventually used books as a creative outlet.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think that a lot of authors do pour themselves into the stories that they write, and they use elements from other books that they've read in the past. And I wanted to know, were there any other particular directions that the book could have gone in instead of the ending that it had?
Yeah, I think the original story, it was, man, you go through so many different drafts as a writer. It's just, I don't know. I can't remember where we started. It was a different title. The storyline was different. The characters' names were different. I think I ended the story with him finding a book versus what the ending is today. And yeah, I think just writing, you go on to like a editing roller coaster where you start one place and you end up somewhere else. So I definitely know it did not originally end with the ending that it has now.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because every time I read a book, I always think in my mind alternate endings. So like what you just said, there are so many edits, so many drafts that you have to do. It's just really cool to think about how many different possible outcomes any story.
And no one thinks picture books take that much editing, but I say it all the time. Picture books are really tough to edit because you have this tough concept that you got to get down in a short amount of time for someone to understand, and then for them want to share it to their children.
Yeah, and you have to make it so that it's concise for the kids to be able to understand too. So even right now, I'm trying to write a picture book, and it's a lot harder than I thought it was. It's a lot harder because at my age, I'm 15 right now, so I write like a 15-year-old. I don't write for 8-year-olds to read. I write for teachers to grade. So that's why I think it's such an interesting process to write a picture book altogether.
So I still behave like I'm 8 years old. So easier for
That's funny. I also love the diversity of the characters. And one of my favorite scenes in the book was when all the students were sitting on the ground and listening to the teacher.
Mhm.
And I just noticed how many different kinds of students were drawn there. And I think that representation and showing diverse images and stories are so important because in the past, there have been a lot of books, and all the books, even I was represented in school, there were very few of them. And most of the characters were of Caucasian descent or they were animals, and that's what was presented to us. So, what are your thoughts on representation in children's literature?
When I originally started writing, it was from a very literacy focused perspective. I wanted to write books to help kids understand the importance of reading and how books had this magical gift that allowed us to be free. Uh, but as I got more into the literary space and I realized there were a lot of kids that looked just like I look and grew up in the environments that I grew up in that needed some connectivity to the message I was trying to send. That's when cultural relevancy became a tremendous part of what I wanted to accomplish. And the truth is, literacy is tough not just for an isolated group of individuals. Illiteracy is something that affects multiple ethnicities, multiple races. And I think as an African American male speaking out about the importance of reading, I needed to make sure the most disadvantaged literacy group, which is young African American boys, saw themselves or saw someone who looks like them saying, this is important. And that scene in the book that you mentioned, it's cool that you recognize that because that was a moment that the illustrator and I said was an opportunity for children to see they're not the only ones with, maybe having trouble finding a book. It's everyone really does.
And I think that's a cool concept and the idea that you had because it's really being proactive. Because you saw a problem and then you wanted to fill the gap with it. And I think that you're a role model and Henley is a role model and all of those books out there with main characters of color. Because kids will be able to look at those people and say, hey, I can do that too, or I can relate to that person. And then they'll feel more inspired to seek out books where they feel represented. And that's also really cool that you and the illustrator had that conversation because it's something that I feel like all of the readers of this book are going to pick up on. And on the topic of illustrations, I just wanted to say that the pictures in this book were phenomenal.
He
So
did a
can
great
you,
job. He
yeah,
did.
you really did.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about the illustrations and working with the illustrator?
So the way it works is I write the story and I submit it to Scholastic. I work with my editor, and we kind of define the temperature or texture of the book. And that allows us to go out and start matching illustrators with the same vibe. So we found Michael Robertson and looked at some of his work, and it was just right on par with the feel that we were trying to project with the book. Now he by tenfold outshot my expectations. But when we were having the conversations, we knew we wanted the book to have representation. We knew that we wanted the book to have diversity. And we knew we wanted it to be fun, loving, and very active. And that's why you have scenes like in the book where he's reading books about monsters, aliens, cats chasing mice. And you look at that page, and then you go to the page in the classroom, and he was just a perfect person to make all that come to life.
And I think that the pictures even brought the story just off the pages. Because
Yeah.
even those scenes you were talking about, it was just very engaging. And I'm a teenager sitting here reading this picture book over and over again because I love the pictures so much and the story that goes along with it. So what was your favorite part about writing the book?
It was probably all the jokes. We start off saying, reading books about dinosaurs made his brain hurt, so he gave books back to the dinosaurs. him taking books to the swimming pool to see how well they could swim. Instead of reading the cookbook, he'd fill his mouth with grapes. That was, I like to think I'm funny. I'm not really that funny, but that was an opportunity for me to interject my sense of humor.
Yeah, and I think the young readers are going to appreciate that too, because it was funny. And like I said before, it's just so engaging, and it's an interesting story to read, especially if you're looking at it from the standpoint of representation. And this is something that everybody can find a way to do, because I know a lot of the time kids feel discouraged and they can't find a book just that they want to read. They haven't found something that's for their section or for their niche, or something that they'll enjoy so much that they'll seek out more books. And this story is just putting the message across that there's something for everybody. Even if you have to do it on your own, or if you have to ask somebody for help, you'll always be able to find a story to read. So is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Funny side note before, because you made me think of this terrible idea I had when I was writing. So in the story, you go through the process of Henley goes through the process of finding his favorite book, and he ends up writing a story. Well, the very story he writes is actually the book, right? So I was like, I don't think people are going to really catch that. Let's just, instead of putting my name as the author, put Henley. And the publisher was like, that's a terrible idea.
It was like, at first I was thinking, and I was like, wait. Oh, I get it now. It was clever. That was really, really clever. Yeah, I just love the book as a whole, and I think everybody's going to really enjoy it. So that wraps up all the questions I have for you. If there's anything else you want to say to the viewers, just say it now, because I think they're just going to be really excited to get the book. Everybody who's watching this, go buy this book. It releases on December 29th. It's going to be a great purchase. You can read it, and it's really going to change your outlook on reading books in general, especially the illustrations as well, because it makes the story jump off the page.
You're great. You're great at this. I would say if you are financially able to purchase a book for your family, please go get one. If you are financially able to purchase a book for a child who can't afford one, please do that also. Book ownership is a huge part of kids falling in love with reading. But the unfortunate truth is many kids, similar to the way I grew up, can't afford a book. So if you have the opportunity and the means to buy a book for your child and another child who may not be able to afford one, please do so. I'm sure they will cherish that book forever.
Yeah, and I think that you bringing that up is very important, because even if somebody receives a book as a gift, especially a child, they're thinking in their mind, hey, this person thought I was important enough to give me a book. Let me read it, see what it's all about. And you might have inspired a mentality of reading in somebody for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and taking the time to talk to me about your upcoming book, my very favorite book in the whole wide world. I really enjoyed talking to you about the process and learning everything about the illustrations and how you're in the story yourself. And I'm just so excited for it to come out. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. You're incredibly smart. You have a bright future. I mean, I can't believe you're only 15. That's wild. Just keep going. Keep going. Write your stories. Tell your story, and let your experience impact the world as well. So thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who's watching. When his book releases, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, Target, and Walmart. And I advise you to get it as soon as possible, because the story's so good that it just might sell out. And I want to thank you so much again for watching, and make sure to come back to the Brown Kids Read channel for some more reading fun. I'm your host, Ssanyu Lukoma, and I'm here with Malcolm Mitchell. Until next time, bye!